Greetings Seekers, and welcome back to DungeonFog once again. In this video, we are going to be looking at the Levels and Layers tool. This tool is something that I have alluded to in previous videos, and for this video, we are finally going to delve into exactly what that means, what we can manipulate, and how we can manipulate. When you click on the Levels and Layers tool down here underneath the dynamic lighting, it'll bring you up this menu here. Now, the Levels and Layers tool is conveniently broken up into two different sections, the Layers section and the Levels section. So the Layers section will refer to anything on a particular section of the map or layer of the map, and everything that can be manipulated and adjusted therein. So when we are looking at the stage level, it is broken down into two subsections. The content, which is anything that exists outside of a room, so any brush strokes, shapes, paths, anything that you create that is outside of a room, and then the rooms themselves, anything that is contained therein. If you had multiple rooms, you would be able to see each room individually stacked on top of each other that you can then click these sub-menus down. So when you click on room, it will bring you up everything that you have labeled as a room that you can then go into and start manipulating the assets and any other objects that you've put inside. So we're going to first take a look at content. Again, as mentioned, content refers to anything that exists outside of any rooms that you've created on the current level that you're working on. So there's the path that we made from the last time, and then the grass plains and grass dents that are defaulted when I selected this map. When you hover over an object, it will highlight on the map showing you where it is. Then you can click on that particular object to show you exactly how you can edit it if you feel like editing it. We can change the name. So we can call this, instead of furrow, we can call this entrance pathway. It also indicates what type of object it is. So here's our path. Here is a brush stroke, and here is something that is defaulted to the stage itself. This is something that can be manipulated when you're creating a new level, which we will get into in just a moment. Each object that you highlight over can be made visible or invisible by clicking the eye icon. And you can also lock or unlock it. If we wanted to, we could quickly lock or unlock everything here. We could also make everything visible and invisible if we wanted to do the hide or show all. You can also create a group, and creating a group is something that we're going to touch on a little bit later when we do more advanced editing types, because you can actually create asset and texture groups depending on whether or not you want to place stuff down in quick succession, but we're going to go over that in a later video when we talk about advanced editing techniques. Once we have each of our objects highlighted here, we can go back and take a look at our room. So when you click on the room section, as mentioned, every area that you've created that exists as a room, using the Draw Rooms tool specifically, or if you've converted from a shape, which again, I do not recommend you using because it will crash the system, you can choose to make the whole room visible or invisible, and you can click on the arrow here to bring down the sub-menu of what is contained within the room. And here's where the layers feature gets a little bit more in-depth. If you've placed things in a room, it will delineate doors and windows separately from other content. So when we clicked back on the stage, for example, and we saw the content here, when we see that, we see our shapes, brush strokes, and any default textures that appear on the map when we select a new level or create a new map from scratch. Those same features are going to be manipulatable under the content. Doors and windows exist separately because they function as a slightly different tool than your typical assets, brushes, and paths, but anything that you've created that isn't essentially a door or window will fall under the content tab. So when we click on content, it will give us a list of every single thing that is contained within the room that we have designated as a room. By hovering over particular objects, we can see which object we're working on. So in this case, we're hovering over the lantern, which is this one right here. We can change its name. So, main all lantern 1. We can make it invisible, visible, and lock it. Once you've selected your object that you want to manipulate, we can head over to the Arrange section for that particular object. And I've alluded to this feature in several videos, and now we actually get to see what that all means. So we have our lantern highlighted and selected. We will head down to the Arrange section. And when we open up that, we can see all the different ways that we can manipulate the layering. So let's look at the layering types. You have regular, above walls, and map decoration. If an object's layering is regular, that means it can be manipulated as a normal object, meaning it will interact with other objects if it's supposed to, as let's say a light source, for example, or it will be hidden by other objects if something's placed over top. All that means is that the object isn't acting in any unusual way, it's acting as its default state. If something is listed as above walls, it will always be kind of placed at the top of the asset list, insofar as anything that's placed over top of it will get put underneath it. So if I click on above walls, for example, suddenly this lantern is now sitting above the wall, which means if I put anything over top of it, it's not going to work, right? It's technically sitting at the highest level, which means nothing else can be placed over top of it. If I have the object listed as a map decoration, that means it's just existing on the map, but it doesn't interact with anything. So it doesn't create shadows if it's being hit by a light source. You can change its color and things like that, but essentially what it means is just no fancy advanced editing can be done with it, and it doesn't interact in a way that allows other objects or features to manipulate its existence. So the easiest example would be for lighting. If something is a map decoration, it basically does not cast any shadows. It more or less doesn't really exist on your map. It's more just for flavor, not for actual usage or manipulation. And then we have these 4 sections here, and this is all going to pertain to the asset list over here, right? So if we clicked on this object to bring to the front, what that means is it will take the object and have it at the top of the list. So to back up for a second, the way that layering works in DungeonFog is that everything sits on top of each other, building from essentially the bottom up, but everything that goes in when you're placing a new object down gets stacked on top. So if you were to, let's say, put a table down, then you put a rug on top of it, well, the rug now sits on top of the table, not the other way around, so you have to flip things around in order to make it make sense. Now, I'll show you exactly what that looks like right now. So when we're looking at this example over here, this table and 4 chairs, what happened was I placed a table down first and then placed a carpet on top of it. Well, obviously, I don't want a carpet to sit on top of a table. That doesn't make any sense. Clearly, I intended for the carpet to be an area carpet, not a table runner. So what I have to do is, highlighted here where my cursor is, you'll see this little hamburger menu right here, and the 4 crosshairs pop up. What I need to do is I need to click that object and then move it on top of the object that I want it to sit above. So now the table sits on top of the square carpet as originally intended. So when we go back to our arrange over with the lantern, what we're telling DungeonFog to do here is we want to bring this object to the absolute top of the list, which in this case, it is. It's already there, which is perfectly fine. If we wanted to move an object forward, all we are doing is telling DungeonFog that we want to take the object where it currently sits and move it 1 position higher. So let's say this wooden chair, for example. Well, let's bring it forward. Now it just brings it up 1 spot as opposed to all the way up to the top of the list. That being said, we can also put it back to its original location if we wanted to by sending it backwards. So send it back. Now the wooden chair is back in its original spot on the list of assets as it was placed originally on the map. If we wanted to send it to the very bottom of the list, that is what the send to back feature does. Where you're placing your assets on your layering is going to determine based on how you want your objects to look and interact with each other as you're placing them down on the map. Which is why I recommended when we were placing down assets way back when, what you want to do is you want to basically work from the bottom layer up. So put all of your carpeting, all of your brush strokes, put all of that stuff on the bottom first, and then build your layers on top of it. If you happen to get a really neat idea that you're like, oh, I could totally do some excellent shading with some brush strokes and some color right here, but I've already put down a whole bunch of my assets, what you can do then is that would be a good time to do something like send to back, where it takes your selected object and then puts it to the bottom of the list, having everything else sit on top of it. Just a specific example, but that is essentially what we are doing. We are telling DungeonFog that the object that we are looking at, we want to either put it to the top of the list, move it up one spot, or several spots depending on how much we want to click, sending it backwards to rearrange its position on the list, or sending it to the very bottom of the list. Once we have all of our objects, assets, brushes, shapes, and paths all situated correctly within the list on the layers, we can then move to creating an additional level. So what you're going to see is the default base level that we've created. Now we actually haven't named the level that we're on, so it's defaulted to stage. We can actually change that name as well, and we can go, now we're working on the entrance level. If we wanted to quickly recreate this exact same level, all of its features, all of its layout and everything, we can simply just duplicate the level. And what that does is that will make an exact duplicate in every which way, all the assets, all the layering, everything, an exact replica. Whatever level we're highlighted on, as you can see, the one above us is currently a darker shade than the one that we're working on. The one that we're highlighting on is nice and gray, showing us exactly which level we are on. We can then choose to hide that level, duplicate that level, or delete it. Now, I'm going to delete it because I don't necessarily need an exact replica of what I've made. When we want to actually create a new level from scratch, what we will do is we will create a new level like so. Once we've created a new level, we can then name this level. So let's go over here. If we wanted to show this stage, we can highlight the show stage or toggle that on and off. Now, this is going to be particularly helpful when we're creating multiple levels of buildings in particular. So we can then utilize what we see on the bottom level and recreate something on top of it without having to be bogged down by everything else that's there. If the stage is darkened, we can then just lighten it up to make it easier for us to manipulate what we're working on. The allow ghosting for levels above allows us to see any level above the current level that we are working on. To quickly illustrate that, let's build a second level. So we now have a new level built over top of our old level. So let's just jump down for a second back to our entrance level. So now that we have allow ghosting for levels above selected, you can see a very faint outline and shading of the floor that we placed above this one. If we turn that off, then that level no longer exists. So just to better illustrate the allowing ghosting for levels above, we are on our entrance level. We are allowing ghosting for levels above this one, which means that anything on the second level will be visible. When we jump up to the second level, we can see that anything we made on the third level that I duplicated, I just made a little off extension over there. We can see that that is now extended on the level above us, but only for the level that we are currently working on. If we jump back down to the entrance level, that third level is not visible. If you're not already subbed to the channel, you can always hit the sub button down below. That always helps us out. Hitting that bell icon lets you get notified when new videos get posted. Both are great ways to continue to support the channel. If you do ever want to catch me when I live stream, you can head over to twitch.tv/EsquireVT. I'd love to have you come out and check out a live stream or two where I do a whole bunch of different content. I want to thank you guys very much for watching the video. I appreciate everything you've been doing to help us get to where we are currently at right now. Thank you for the continued support, and I will see you all in the next video.